her off season as they're coming to the end of the season here. England and Europe right now with this popular group in Europe. And this is her here. That's my daughter, Ryan Danielle Torrero. RDT in the house? Yes. Boy, thank goodness she looks like her mom. You want to be looking like me? Oh, no, the creature from the Lost Lagoon? Oh, wait a minute. There's Lee. It went off. Okay. All right. So anyhow, I just posted up that picture of her. Wow. She is, I'm going to have to tell her she needs to put some pants on. Dad's going to get involved in that one, right? Yeah, right. I don't think it's going to work too well. She's 28 years old, right? Yeah, she's gonna do what she wants to do, and she'll listen to me, and then she'll do what she wants to do, right? All right. So let's get the Instagram going here. So normally on Tuesday and Wednesday, that's what we do. We cover entertainment and politics. Anyway, the Republican just a few months ago. So Gavin Newsom, which I call him Gruesome Newsom, he's just gone off the left end so far that even liberals are starting to look at him and say, wait a minute, whoa, wait a minute. We had our time with Moonchild Jerry Brown to get him down here so we can get the Democratic point of view at the time and have like I don't know if I can manufacture them. I'd just like to see them both get in a fist fight like Wally George used to do. Did you first shock talk show host around the country? And he was on straight networks here locally, too. He was on all the big regular TV channels, and then he gravitated to having his own on a public channel service. But it was a nice show, and it was just raucous. It was Jerry Springer, Robert Downey, Howard Stern, all wrapped up into one. Wally. Oh, it was Wally, right? Out of Orange County. And he was a conservative. He was off the right wing of conservatives. I mean, he was as far right as Gruesome Newsom is as far left. I mean, this guy he had a picture of John Wayne holding a flag in the background, right? I mean, I loved Wally, though. I just loved to see the fights. That was a great thing about it. But that'd be kind of cool to get Newsom and Cox in here. Yes, it sounds like a new body lotion. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Newsom and Cox. Yeah, it does, right? Something like that. But anyway, so that's what we usually do on Tuesday and Wednesday. And on Thursday, we have the real story, and that's the boys, those crazy boys. That's right. Dominic Craig, and Dale Bird. They argue amongst each other as to who's right. They've been friends for life, and one's on the left and one's on the right, who used to be on the left but is now converted to the right. So they argue back and forth, and I throw my 2 cents in there every now and then, but I just try to throw some fuel on the fire and get them going. I just sit back and throw some more gasoline on the fire, right? Shoot some more firecrackers at them both, right? And it's a lot of fun, though. Actually, we do talk about a lot of stuff, and it's guttural. It's like 3 guys talking in a bar or a pub after a baseball game, right? It's sort of kind of the tailgate party before the Rams out in the parking lot, and or more like a Raider tailgate party. That's more like it is the Oakland Raiders, but it's a lot of fun, and we get to talk about a lot of the topics, and they get to put their 2 cents in. I always get so tired of the talking heads on TV, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and all those regular channels. I get tired of these guys who are ex-CIA agents, these gals who are ex-FBI, government, officials, politicians, retired. They all basically say the same things over and over and over, depending what slant they're taking and who's hired them to be on their TV program as a commentator and a specialist, and it's fun, but it just gets old hat and boring. In fact, I'm really getting tired of of all of that mudslinging back and forth, because really nothing's getting accomplished about nothing. It's all sort of kind of staying the same. Nothing really gets accomplished, and the idea of compromise seems to have gone right out the door here in the last 30 or 40 years in terms of our political system. So the thing about Trump, though, he's not really a Republican. He went in under the Republican ticket because there's a two-party system. There will never be, I don't think, a third party in my lifetime that'll ever get to the point where they'll have enough money and power that they can rise to the presidential level. Maybe Congress, maybe a senator, yes, but not to the presidential level. It's just the Republican and Democratic Party are just owned by the same money and the same powers. They hedged their bet. Like when you go to Vegas and you throw some money down on insurance when you're playing blackjack, they hedged their bet. Win or lose, they always win. Whether they lose, they win. And whether they win, they win. So either way. So that's always that stops the ability for a third party to ever be able to have the opportunity to rise and gather up enough money. Over $1 billion it costs now to run for the presidential election, though it took Donald Trump less because he's such a savvy guy and understood how to manipulate the reality news services, the news media, the papers and the magazines, and he understood the social aspect, social news with Twitter and Instagram, and they really got a handle on that better than anybody. So they were able to get a lot of free, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of free advertisement, where the other party, Hillary Clinton, she had to pay for a lot of her stuff, unfortunately, but Donald Trump didn't have to pay for a lot of it, which was very fortunate for him. So, but nevertheless, most regular politicians have to raise so much money in order to run for the presidential, to be president of the United States of America. But so it's interesting to see how this November is going to shape up. I think it's going to be a Republican landslide, in my opinion. There's just so much negative stuff coming out now. And even some of the people on CNN and MSNBC are starting to say, yeah, this is it's just not making any sense. And there's a lot of mudslinging and it's getting hard for them to deny some of these facts of the corruption of the FBI and the DOJ, et cetera. So we'll see how that goes. But that leads me to talk about today, of course, if you do remember, and you were born over 17 years ago today, the bombing and destruction and collapsing of the World Trade Towers. The Remembrance Day, of course, today being 9/11 Day, and the 17th year of that anniversary. 17 years. It's been 17 years. Can you imagine? Isn't that amazing that 17 years have clicked by the clock? It just seems like it was yesterday. I guess those men and women who were living at the time of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, when those dirty Japs bombed us at Pearl Harbor, and they took out our whole Pacific fleet except for the carriers, and they took everything else out and thought they could defeat us then at that point. I guess those folks that were living at that time, 17 to 20 years after 1941 and 1961, they remembered it just like we remember the bombing of the World Trade Towers. And, of course, the plane taking a nosedive in the Pennsylvania farm and the 757 flying into the Pentagon. As we remember that just 17 years later to 20 years. If you think back, those people that were your age 17 to 20 years ago in 1941, when they remembered what it was like looking back from 17 to 20 years from their point of view, that would have been about 1961 or so, they felt the same way you feel. And even those folks that fought in the Civil War, when it was over in 1865, kind of meander along to about 1867, but by 1887, those people would have felt the same way. It's funny how human nature never changes, and our feelings are all the same. When you start to try to think back, and I wonder how those people felt. I wonder how those people after the Revolutionary War, how they felt about America 20 years after, and how they felt about this country. And certainly, Pearl Harbor was the most recent tragedy that consumed America in every aspect of it until 9/11 day. And when that happened, that sort of replaced for this generation Pearl Harbor and brought it home to see the loss of life, which was greater than Pearl Harbor, the loss of life instantly crushed, pulverized. And my question was always, for what? Why did that all have to happen? For what reason? What did it accomplish? And who benefited from it? These were two things that just stuck in my head the moment I was woke up and Mama T said, turn the TV on, and those towers were being hit by those planes, and then they went down, and the Pentagon was hit, and then Tower 7 went down, and then the 757, those guys fighting in the cockpit, the plane took a rollover and went straight to the ground in the Pennsylvania farm field. Why? What happened? I mean, the loss of life. For what reason? I mean, these were just people that were going to work every day. I've been up in those trade towers, too, at least a dozen times. I had business on floor 57 in Trade Tower 2, and I had the opportunity on a couple of occasions to go to the top of 1 and 2 at the observation desks up there. One was where the antenna was, and the other one was where they kept all their air conditioners and stuff up there, like all the tops of the buildings. And when they first opened in the 70s, you could actually go up there, get a ticket, and go up there and stand on the tallest buildings in the world, because that's what they were. They were the tallest buildings in the world when they opened up in the early 70s. And when they opened up, you could actually get a ticket and go up there and at the observation desk platform and observation 1 and look out. But they stopped doing that because it was too dangerous to be outside. Like in the Empire State Building, you can go almost all the way up to the top, and there's an observation desk with telescopes and stuff, and it's open. It's not covered, and that's how the World Trade Towers were when they first opened. But it was just too dangerous. The wind off the ocean and the Hudson River and the Lower East Side just would blow too hard, and it would blow hard. You could look at each of those buildings, and you take a point at one building just across away from the other building, and you could watch the buildings move. And they were engineered to move up to 8 to 10 feet in any direction. 8 feet for sure in any direction, the sway. Now, you can't feel it when you're in one of the floors. Each one of those floors was 1 acre, 43,560 square feet. So you couldn't feel the motion, but if you did a point out the window at the other tower, you could see how the buildings would sway in the heavy winds. It was really crazy. When you're in Chicago, you can see that with the original Hancock building. They've renamed it, and the original Sears Towers building, they've renamed that too. They sway. They sway in the wind. They're designed that way to give and take. And it's really remarkable. Those buildings were really remarkable. There was just no way they could ever come down. There was just no way they could ever come down. I mean, you had a B-17 bomber crash into the Empire State Building, it was a B-24 bomber that crashed into the Empire State Building. That was the one that Doolittle's raid, the Douglas B-24, when they originally bombed Tokyo right after Pearl Harbor, within a couple of months off the Lexington. Crashed into the Empire State Building, and nothing happened to the Empire State Building. And it was full of fuel and engines and oil and impact. So nothing could ever happen to these buildings. Planes crashing into them, they were designed to be able to absorb planes crashing into them. Small planes, helicopters, jets. They were designed with that idea in mind to be able to withstand nuclear explosion, because we were in the middle of the Cold War at the time. And if New York got hit by an atomic bomb, these buildings were designed to at least stay standing even during that. So they were engineering feats, one of the wonders of the world, if you ever had the opportunity to go up into them when they were standing. You felt so safe. So these men and women were just going to work that day, just going to work, just like you going to work today, and thinking about what they're going to do that day and their families, and thinking about what they're going to have for lunch, and taking that important phone call, making that important decision, going up the escalator, the elevator, going down to the cafeteria, going to the bathroom, just going to work, regular folks. And all of a sudden, a plane smashes into them. A big plane, a 757, smashes into them. And then another plane smashes into the other building. And it's numbing when you see that for the first time, as of course I know you did. For me, it was numbing to see these planes smash into these two giant structures that I had been in on many occasions while I was in New York. And so it was just unbelievable that two planes could accidentally crash into these two buildings. Well, you knew the way the trajectory of these planes were, these jets, when we first saw it, you knew that wasn't just per chance. That was on purpose. And they quickly put it together. And of course, the big 757 that was supposed to hover the ground at about 1 foot and crash into the Pentagon, and then the guys who fought back the terrorists on the plane in the Pennsylvania farm field, and the plane took a turn over like a kamikaze and straight down. You knew this was something that wasn't just a mishap. There was some planning to this. And immediately, of course, the reaction on President Bush's face at the elementary school, a lot of people have questioned that reaction. A lot of conspirator theorists have questioned that reaction. But what kind of reaction do you give when someone walks up and whispers in your ear and you're in front of a bunch of elementary kids? What kind of reaction do you give or you get when you're told that the World Trade Towers have been bombed, the Pentagon have been bombed by planes, by jets acting as giant bombs, and in Pennsylvania, and there's another jet flying out there on the way to the White House. And that was supposed to be the one that crashed in the Pennsylvania farm field. That one was supposed to make a left-hand turn out of Pennsylvania and head right to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., and never made it. So what kind of reaction does the president give? What do you do in your front of children? What do you do? So, and then, of course, you had immediately the news stations out there, who did it? Who did this? Where did it come from? How did it happen? And then the story about the terrorists, the 13 terrorists, and the videotapes of them going through the security systems at the airports, and that they've been in the country for a while, learning how to fly planes, learning how to, and most of them couldn't even fly in these single-engine Cessnas. They couldn't even fly these planes when they interviewed the instructors that taught some of these guys. They couldn't fly these planes that well. And the simulators that they were supposed to have gone into, they failed miserably in. Now, you're talking a 757 jet, one of the most sophisticated planes even today. And when you take it off of autopilot, you have to be flying that thing. Remember the Sully who landed the 737 in the Hudson Bay? I mean, both his engines got whacked by ducks, by geese, and they both blew out. The turbines twisted all those engines up, and he had no power. He had to land that thing in the water. Now, that's unheard of. You don't land planes in the water. They don't land in the water well. Those wings come apart pretty quick. And he was a schooled veteran military pilot. He was a schooled veteran commercial pilot. I mean, a distinguished career, one of the best, literally. Thousands and thousands of hours. And to land that plane, when you saw it come in and land in the Hudson Bay, or the Hudson River, that is, to land that in Hudson River, it was like a ski. It was like you were pulling skis on your speedboat. That thing just slid right in there like a bobsled, just like a guy jumping off a ski jump. It just slid right in there butt first, and he landed that thing down, and it just sat there till everybody could get out on the wings. That was a feat that nobody's ever done with a commercial plane. In the military, they fall off aircraft carriers. I mean, they overshoot sometimes, and they have to ditch the plane, but they always break apart. This thing just stood there. So you're talking a guy who's had thousands and thousands of hours to be able to fly a plane like that. Now, these two characters, after a year's worth of time of learning on single-engine planes and simulators, were able to take care of these 757s, 4 of them, right? Fly one at the Pentagon about 2 feet off the ground, come over. If you see, I've been to the Pentagon. It's right by Arlington National Cemetery, okay? It's just across the way. And where that plane hits, there's a little bluff. The Pentagon kind of sits in a kind of a little bowl on one side. There's this little bluff where the highway comes in, and it kind of goes up maybe, we're only talking like 15 or 20 feet, and then it kind of settles down, and then you come into the Pentagon, right? That's kind of where the plane hit. Well, how does a 757 either go up and down and stay at a direct angle into the Pentagon, or drop from 20,000 feet, guided perfectly, timing all the elevation that you got to come down, slowing the plane down so you don't fall, but keeping it up and coming down and coming down and coming down, miss the bluff and hit that Pentagon at 2 feet off the ground, this giant 757 plane. How do you do that to a rookie pilot? Well, luck is not nothing to do with it as far as I'm concerned. That's a double negative, not nothing, because you can't do luck. I grew up in a flight family. My father flew planes off the USS Lexington in Korea, a tanker plane that would fill up all the jets coming in, the first American jets that were coming in and out of Korea. He served there, and he would fill those planes up after they'd come from their sorties, and he would be in the biggest plane they had at the time, the tanker plane. They didn't have these big AWACS tanker planes, these 707s or these giant they had a tanker plane that used to be a bomber. It's the biggest plane a carrier could carry at the time, and they would fill it up with fuel and fill these jets up. So the stories he talks about trying to land the plane on an aircraft carrier in perfect water is frightening. And if the water is moving up and down and the swells and they got to land, they got to land. It doesn't matter what the water's doing, the ocean is doing. They got to land. And you just don't fly a plane with luck. Luck means you're dead. My mother was a pilot. She first learned how to fly in a Tri-Pacer, a little one-engine, 120 horsepower plane, a 58 Tri-Pacer. Okay, then we got a Cessna. We got a 4-seater Cessna, and that was like a great plane. And then she graduated to dual engine. She got her license, her ticket to fly dual engine, and then she couldn't get her ticket anymore after that a couple of years because her blood pressure went real high. But she flew for a good, I would almost say, 18 years in small craft. There is no luck. Luck means you're dead. I mean, it's just that simple. So you're talking about guys that had to maneuver these planes in ways that, I mean, only the very best of the best could possibly have the luck to maneuver these planes in positions, especially the Pentagon one. The other one that took the nosedive that was headed to the White House, but crashed in the Pennsylvania farm field. Yeah, okay, if that's what happened on the plane, they took the plane back from the terrorists and they fought in the cockpit. The plane did its rollover and then went nosedive down into the ground. All right. That happened up higher, so they had time to fight and all that stuff. But if you've ever been in a plane, and I flew lots of hours with my mom, and I used to hate it when she'd do those practice stalls because she'd turn the engines off, almost, right? And she'd stall. And the plane, what would happen in the smaller planes when you do a practice stall, that means you're turning the engine off on purpose because you got to be able to turn the engine back on in case of an emergency. The only way you can practice this is to be up in the air to do it. You can't practice it on the ground. Okay? So you got to go through. I hated that. And the reason why I hated it is because the plane, you'd think the plane, if you turned the engine off, would go nose down, but it doesn't. The plane turns the engine off, the butt goes down. It's like it's anti-gravity. You'd think the heavy part of the plane would go down, but the butt goes down, and then the plane begins to turn, and it'll go over on itself, and then it'll do one of those nosedives then if the engines don't get back up. And this is the wings on top. The wings, when they're on the bottom, the plane does a little different thing. When the wings are on the bottom, the plane doesn't exactly go down, but the plane wobbles either left or wobbles either right, depending on the air current. It doesn't actually flip over because the wings are on the bottom and not on the top. So when the air comes up, it catches the wings and makes it do this. But when the wings are below your seating, like on a jet, the air balances you out a little bit more, and you just tend to turn whichever way gravity and the wind is blowing you in that direction. Okay, I hated that stuff because, especially in the ones with the wings over, because it went like this, and you never knew. Going straight down but not knowing where you're going. Can you imagine the centrifugal force, the energy of force that is when that jet up there in Pennsylvania is rolled over and is going down? The G's on those people, the G forces on those people, the passengers. If you're not strapped in, you're at the back of the plane and on the ceiling with a broken arm. I mean, just the G forces alone will put you unconscious. Like that's why the Air Force and the military, they have those suits that expand to keep their blood from rushing into the heart, not out of the heart, into the heart and into your head. So anyhow, but okay, I could deal with that. But the loss of life on 9/11, okay? Now, for what reason? Why? That's the first question was, for me, when that happened, was the loss of life. For what reason? What did it accomplish? Why? Because you got some Muslim, Islamic, crazy, wild, idiotic people that want to kill Americans because they hate America. They hate God, Christianity. They hate every religion in the world but their own. Is that why? Really? Or do you have another reason? They're just fanatics. They're just absolutely insane people. They're all psychopaths, and there's 13 of them. And they coordinated this thing all together. They happened all at once, all up and down the East Coast. Well, wait a minute. Why? What reason? What were they trying to make a statement? For what reason? Do they want to fight America? Do they really want to fight a country like America? Do they? Can you imagine some dude out there in the Arabian desert somewhere, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, which isn't the Arabian desert, Pakistan, Jordan, Palestine, Israel, Egypt, Libya, that whole section known as the Middle East. Can you imagine some dude sitting there one day decides, I'm going to piss America off, and I'm just going to do something so outrageous. Me and my 13 cohorts, my buddies here, we're going to piss America off, and we know we'll be able to beat them. We're going to win. We're going to win. Ultimately, we're going to beat them. Are you kidding me? Really? Come on. Unless you're a psychopath and you really are warped in the brain, are we going to go bomb China with nuclear bombs? Are we going to go bomb Russia with nuclear bombs? Come on. Is China going to do that to us? Come on. It's not going to happen. It'll never happen because the retaliation is unspeakable. It's just unspeakable. And I don't care what those people say and what they do. If they want to go meet their 72 virgins, if that's what their promise is, all right, and they want to do that, I bet you there's a whole bunch of them out there that have the same religion that don't particularly want to meet their 72 virgins on Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay? They might want to meet them when they're 93 years old. So you don't have everybody thinking on the same page there. So come on. What did they do this? What was the reasons? I've always, that was the first question that came into my head, because the loss of life didn't create what I believe that the outcome of what they wanted. And the loss of life in America was just, for what reason? There's no reason. Or is there a reason? A reason that we weren't told about? Is there a reason? That's the first thing that popped into my head. The second thing that popped into my head after that was obviously, what is our retaliation going to be? What are we going to do? How do we fight an enemy that's all around the world? That's our enemy. Where do we target to fight from? And instantly, all of a sudden, we're talking, this stuff doesn't make any sense to me. They're trying to find something on Donald Trump, and they're not going to find anything. 2 years this investigation has been going on with some of the best legal lawyer investigators, hunters that Mueller could put together, okay? They can't find anything, but yet in 5 minutes in less than a day after the bombing of the trade towers with these jets and the destruction of the Pentagon and the plane in the Pennsylvania farm field, within a day's time, they already knew the 13, they knew where they came from, they knew their brothers, they knew their sisters, they knew their kids, they knew their mothers, they knew where they went to school, they knew where they went and studied how to fly a plane, they knew how long they were in the country. Within a day or two, they knew everything they needed to know about these people. But yet it takes 2 years to figure out if they're going to find something on Donald Trump. You see, because there's something that just doesn't connect there. If you think about it, it doesn't connect. And we find out now during the Trump presidency how corrupt the swamp is in Washington, D.C. Everybody's known that their whole lives, but yet we see it because the curtain was brought back a little bit, and the corruptness and the backdoor dealings, and it's. Do you think that the government wasn't the same 20 years ago? Come on. So these are the things that immediately popped into my mind. So this morning when I woke up and they were reading the names, if you've ever been to the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C., that beautiful memorial that's a V, and it's in the ground. It's black granite with 58,000 men and women etched with their names in there, in the years that they died. Okay, in alphabetical order, the years that they died. There's a statue of a Vietnam vet at one end, and when you walk down in there. You walk down to the middle of the V, the point of the V, and then you walk up. Every time I go there, I can't go down in that pit. I can't go down to the middle of the V. I stand at the top of the V with the left side or the right side, and I take about 3 steps in, and by the time I'm at 4 steps, my emotion, I'm sorry, just takes over me, and you know something? It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to the point that if I see a family touch their father or grandfather now, name or best buddy, that's it. Give me an M16 and let me go to Vietnam. I mean, seriously. I mean, it just takes me over. All right. I feel that way when I go into the newest museum, which about 10 years ago, it's not as new now, the Holocaust Museum. And I couldn't get past the first floor of the Holocaust Museum. It was with my son. He was 10. And we went into one of the first exhibits where they talked about families being broke apart and children. And when we got to the part where they had all the children's shoes, that's it. I said to Jesse Andrew, well, we're going. And I explained to him everything that was going on. And I held back everything I could. We got outside. We left the building. I could not be in that building with my son because the hate for Nazism and Hitler and his gang and the Nazis. Give me a draft card and let me go, baby. Let me sign up right now. I mean, the same feeling. And when I woke up this morning and they're reading the names like they've done every year, for some reason this year it hit me. I said, I watched about 15 minutes of this and I couldn't watch it anymore because look let me have some desert camouflage fatigues and give me my Humvee and my .50 caliber and let me just ride through the desert like Lawrence of Arabia. Thank you very much. It's overwhelming. Okay. So it's just, what can I tell you? I can't help but being me, Jesse T. These people died for no reason. They were killed by either the people that we were told killed them, or they were killed by some nefarious group that we don't know about for some nefarious reason. And we've all heard those stories. I'm not going to go into a lot of those today because it's not the right time to go into that kind of stuff. But what was the final result of it all? We're still in Afghanistan almost 20 years later. Okay? We're still fighting terrorism. We defeated ISIS, but was ISIS really something that wasn't created by somebody? There's lots of information that kind of leads that way, that it was created. We know that the world is not as pure as we thought it was going into World War II because of information, because of the access to information and the access to people asking lots of questions. So we know things happen, but nothing happens just per chance. Just doesn't happen out of the blue. You can't tell me that America's military and defense and our information, gained by spies and by our CIA was not there. It's hard to believe. The only thing that resulted from this was absolute sadness over the death of almost 3,000 people in a matter of minutes. And the EMTs, the police, and the fire people, oh my goodness, they're still dying with all that smoke and all that asbestos and all those toxics and those carcinogens and the hazardous material that they ingested in their skin, in their eyes, in their mouth, in their lungs. they're still suffering the consequences of some very terrible, terrible diseases. Today, another 1,000 to 1,500 of those firefighters and those police have all passed away since then. And some of them are still fighting this. And not only that, the PTSD issues that come along with any kind of tragic situation that's overwhelming, completely overwhelming to you, every sense in your body. That's what we got out of this. Nothing but death and nothing but loss of life and sadness for families forever and ever and ever. It's just terrible. It's the most terrible thing that you could ever imagine happen to you and your family. And I'm talking about this because you can't forget the loss of life. As long as you live, you have to remember what took place on that day. You have to remember the loss of life. And for what reason? What did we accomplish from it? What did we get out of it? Why did they attack us? Why did we allow it to happen? Or did we? Or was it that our eyes were shut, wide open? Is it that we didn't have the right intelligence? Really? Really? You're not talking 1921 here. Okay? You're talking 17 years ago. Modern times. Did we not have the right intelligence? And we got nothing out of it but the loss of life and a 20-year war. And every president and every politician and everybody in the political arena must remember where they were at the time that this took place. Because we can't let this happen again. And I believe that at certain times in the century of a country, you have points where innocence is lost. And one of the points in our recent history, in my lifetime, was the assassination and murder of JFK. Then the assassination and murder of Martin Luther King Jr. And then, of course, Malcolm X was killed. And then you have these loss of innocence. And one of the losses of innocence, of course, was World War II and Pearl Harbor before my lifetime. The loss of this innocence that we had as Americans. And the most recent one, of course, is the destruction of the World Trade Towers and the Pentagon and the death in the Pennsylvania farm field. The loss of innocence. Why do Americans always act so innocent? What is it that makes us believe things that if we just look, we might see a different causation, a different answer, a different reason for those things happening? Why do we get so duped as a population? These are questions that, I don't think there's any answers to them, but I just pose the question because we can't have that happen again. You can't destroy people's lives and families forever because you don't know what's going on, because you look the other way, or because you are part of it, or perhaps none of those reasons. Maybe something completely different. We have to keep our eyes open. We have to keep our politicians with the fire under their feet. We have to keep our military powerful and strong, ready to move, ready to protect this country. We have to, as a population, question our government. Question all the time. Are you doing the job? Can you do the job better? We got to come together and understand, like we came together after 9/11, and we had an enemy. This enemy that was either a true enemy or it was a created enemy. Whichever way you want to look at it, we had a target to shoot at. That was a result. But we have to come together and understand that the target isn't amongst ourselves. There's way too much bickering and hatred and segregation and racism and pointing the finger and yelling out names and saying disgusting things all the time. Each doing this to each doing that. Because when it comes down to it, when you're in a 80-story building and it's hit by an airplane, do you really care whether somebody's black, white, brown, purple, green? Two heads can speak, can't speak? Praise to God or praise to a rock? Does it really matter? No, it doesn't matter. So why should it matter now? The one thing that 9/11 should teach all of us today is that the self-righteous, self-centered bickering that's going on CNN, on Fox, on MSNBC, on every one of these channels, ABC, NBC, PBS, CBS, this grandiose I'm right and you're wrong, and this pitting American against American. It's got to stop. And the one thing that 9/11 taught us and the aftermath is that we have to come together because all we have is ourselves. You think the government's going to take care of you? You think the government really cares? The government cares about the government, and it will exist at any cost. We have to keep the government. We have to keep our military. We have to keep our emotional attitudes in check. That's the thing that these loss of innocence, these tragic situations, they bring this country together. But then we lose it. And we've lost it again. And we cannot afford to have another tragedy. Can't afford it. And if we don't watch out, the powers to be are going to let it happen. Because in tragedy, they exist for a reason. It's sort of like the concept of when I went to law school, I realized one thing in my second year of law school. The only thing that I'm learning here is how to make people hate each other. In civil law, to make people hate each other more than they already hate each other, so that I can charge my $400 or $500 or $600 an hour and keep it going until they got no more money, and then I settle with the other party. And in criminal law, it's not much different. How many cases as a prosecuting attorney, an assistant DA, how many cases can I be successful in so I can become elected, become the DA in some city somewhere? As a defense, as a public defender, how many cases? I get 150 cases every single day on my desk that are brand new. I just want to get through these as fast as I can and do my 20 or 30 years. So we have to understand that the government things like that. So we've got to, as a population, look out for each other. And the one satisfying thing about 9/11 is that you saw America come together for a short period of time. But we've lost that. So learn from the lessons of 9/11. Look at your friend. Look at somebody and say, hey, we're not enemies. We don't agree on things, but we're not enemies. Put the weapons down. Keep your government in check. Make sure we have a strong military that knows what's going on. We can do this as Americans if we do it together. If we do it separate, we get defeated. And another tragedy is going to happen. Don't let it happen that way again. The Jesse T Show right here from 5 to 6 every day, Monday through Friday on thepowerofvoices.com. Across your social media network, we're podcasting right now on Facebook.com/Jesse Terrero, Instagram live at Jesse Terrero, and our YouTube channel, Jesse Terrero, and 20 other broadcasting sites. Good to have you along with us. Tomorrow, another great guest. The Brown Beauty's off duty. See ya!